Today on Raising Your Child on Purpose, we'll be talking about African parenting. So a few months ago, I put out a video which talked about the stereotypes that African parenting has come to be known by, and most of them are negative. I know that everyone will agree with this view, but the truth is, the majority of people, when they describe African parenting, it tends to be, the strict, the aggressive, the vicious, and the mean and all that kind of stuff, the emotionally distant. And even though I know that doesn't categorize every single African parent, I think it's important that we talk about this. Today, my guest will be sharing her story of growing up, being raised by African parents, and she does relate to some of the things I put out. In fact, if I'm honest with you, she relates to most of what I put out in that video. If you haven't seen the video, you can see it on my Instagram page at vera.volume. And my guest is called Atinuke. She writes a blog called Twisted, and I will just read out a blog post that she put out a year ago, I think, or maybe 2 years ago now, on African parenting. I think we Africans avoid topics like this, but maybe we should just talk about it. African parenting, the one approach suits all, attempts at discipline which includes beatings, insults, punishments, and emotional blackmail. Our African parents watched their folks when they were our age and tried to be like their folks or better, but some of them forget to leave out some bad traits their folks had and think it's a way a kid has to learn. There are a majority of African parents who think their kids can't be depressed or have no right to be. We grew up with our African parents mostly thinking for us as kids, telling us how to act and react, and never really letting us express our thoughts. Right from a kid's aspirations to what they wear and how they wear it, gestures and the likes, don't get me wrong, they're probably following in the steps of others before them, trying to be better at enforcing these rules or guidelines they emulated from their parents. But they're not aware that as parents, they're not allowing the kids to be more creative and spontaneous. Some years back, how many folks would have allowed their kids to be musicians and fashion designers and models and makeup artists? They already had an ideology of what a child would be before the child could even think for themselves. And when the child starts to think for themselves, he or she is labeled a rebel. Imagine a child waking up just to be criticized about everything he or she does because it's not done in the African parent's way, or be compared to his peers every now and then, and think that should motivate the child to do better. Or when the African parent says stuff like, to think people are praying to have kids only to end up with a child like you, just because the child did something bad. Words like those makes a child to either have inferiority complex or become rebellious. Then these same parents who use their words to push them away overnight want these same kids to have confidence in them? How? Sometimes I think that African parents forget the child has feelings and they just lash out from a place of hurt. Imagine the frustrating cycle, and then these parents want these damaged people to go out and compete in the real world? Sounds to me like a disaster. I see on social media how we joke about African parents, but really, it's not funny. The African parents crosses the line from motivating a child to being abusive, and they don't even realize it. They seem to forget that there's already pressure from the world, especially for the young adults. And what is supposed to be their safe home, their safe haven, has now become one of the most toxic places for them to be, just because of constant complaints, destructive criticism, unnecessary comparisons from people they expect to lift them up when they feel down. Sometimes African parents create some unrealistic expectations in their heads about what their child would be, without properly interacting with them to know what their interests are or their aspirations and guide them through it. Our African parents need to understand that we don't live in the world they were brought up in, and every day the stakes on being successful are raised higher and higher. We are all humans, and whether we like it or not, we will make mistakes, but we don't need judges, especially from our parents. But we need people who can tell us the truth while still motivating us to be better. Wow, Atinuke, this was so deep to read. And I remember reading this thinking, oh my goodness, this is straight from the heart of a child and people need to hear it, whether they agree with this or not. they need to hear this. This is true. This is your reality. And I think you'll agree with me, and people listening will agree that this is the reality for a lot of our African children that have been raised in African homes.
Okay, thank you, Ebere. For those listening in, my name is Akinseye Atinuke. And my piece was basically about my upbringing. I mean, my parents are who they are, but just like many of us parents are. But at the same time, we also have to admit that our parents don't know everything. In as much as they try to be the perfect parents for us to emulate, I still think that we as human beings still have our faults, and I believe that we can be better and do better. While growing up, I and my mom were not exactly really close because she's the kind of person you say exudes tough love. You know, you understand? And
Yes.
most times it just makes you wonder whether, you guys, whether you're getting it right as a child, or I don't know. Because it's like everything you do, there's always this constant criticism. I mean, I understand she's trying to just, make you a good person. I won't say the perfect person because I don't think there's any perfect anyone. But I think to our parents, they just, I don't know, I think they have this compulsive need because of what society will say. Mm-hmm. I mean, now, if we come down to the Nigerian setting, our parents will always say, don't go and disgrace me outside, or, statements like that. And it makes you wonder, like, so if things come up, are you trying to say that these people can't exactly come out to vouch for you, or say, this is not my kid will never do that? I mean, it makes the child doubt him or herself. And at some point in my life, I did have those doubts. Yeah. And it kind of really set me back a lot, because when I was growing up, I was really timid. I really couldn't interact with people. I couldn't really be myself because, when you're even trying to do things, I was really clumsy. In fact, that's the word. In fact, I heard that word a lot. And sometimes I ask my father, like, is this my mom? Because I really had to be sure, because for every little thing I did, it was like a constant on and on and on. Or you hear words like, is this how you're going to go and represent me in your husband's house? I mean, what is that about? Yeah. So it's, at some point, it just really, I had a really low self-esteem. Yeah. And it's really messed with the way I was able to interact with people. When I was younger, I was really timid. I was timid. I couldn't speak. I couldn't talk to people. I'm always by myself. And then the annoying part is when you're by yourself, it even gets them even more angry or agitated, because they're like, why would you just be by yourself? Yeah. I mean, what am I supposed to do that's supposed to make you happy? Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to be myself. It's getting you angry. I'm trying to avoid anything that would, bring up the constant, incessant argument. And then you still have something to pick on. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. So at some point I was failing in school, and my teachers were really surprised, because I'm really good academically, but if you're not mentally balanced, I don't think you can really function as a person, either as an adult or as a child, because there's an imbalance somewhere. Yeah. Children need to know that even if everyone is against them, just knowing that their parents are solidly behind them, it's enough booster for them. Because I see my cousins over time. I try to be the big cousin. When they do stuff, or my auntie reports them to me, I just tell them you can be better. I mean, because things like that make them actually strive, because they say, oh, this person believes in me. Absolutely. And they already get, let's say, some kind of comfort from that. But when you keep going on with, I see how clumsy you are. Oh, look at you, you dropped this. Look at this. Okay, so there's this really weird thing that, like, say, happens even till now, once in a while. For every time they sharpen a knife at home, for some reason, I'm always the first to get cut. And my mom always made this a point of duty that for every time she sharpens the knife at home, she's like, try and avoid this knife. Because next thing now, you just go into the kitchen. I mean, what's that about? I'm sleeping. I'm having my siesta, and then you just come at me. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy when they always say that you end up doing it. Yeah.
You understand me? And for some reason, I just find myself actually getting caught. I mean, I may not even be really thinking about it, but because for some reason I'm being too careful, it just happens.
Absolutely.
You understand? And
I totally get it.
In the university, my primary and secondary school, I really didn't have friends. I don't even interact with my schoolmates because I won't say shy. I didn't know if being myself was going to make people judge me because I was already facing that at home. Mm-hmm. So I just really kept to myself. They called me weird. They called me awkward. I mean, I already hear these things at home, so I wasn't really bothered. I just focused on being better at hiding myself. Yeah. So I go to the university, and for some reason, I tell myself I want to reinvent myself. Mm-hmm. And in the process of actually reinventing myself, I actually found myself even doing worse things, or should I say, even things on a good day I wouldn't find myself doing. And because I wasn't really close with my parents, I found it really hard to talk to them about it. And to be honest, I actually got, suspended from school at some point because, I mean, I was making a lot of mistakes and I didn't have anybody to really, confide in, to be able to say this, without the fear of being criticized or dissected, being all judgmental about it. But over time, over the years, I got a therapist. I started it started opening up to, and then was like, you have to. I like to think I'm a strong-willed person. Mm-hmm. I like to think that, at some point in my life, I realized that it's really about you. Because you come first. Mm-hmm. I come first. Yeah, and if I'm not mentally, balanced, I really can't function as a really good person for my society. And our society needs more better people, not people who are always afraid to be criticized.
I'm going to have to take you back. I want to take you back because you don't realize you're saying so much and everything. My ears are like, oh, I want to ask. So I have to take you back. Because there's so much to this. Oh my goodness, there's so much to this. And I'm sure the listeners are thinking, wait, she said this. She got suspended. Wait, I want to know. Okay, so let me start with listening to you. It is clear, and I know this from my experience with working with parents and from listening to parents and looking at things that have gone on before, when I was a kid as well. Our parents have good intentions. And I'm always saying when I'm speaking to parents, I say, look, if this talk was about intentions, then the talk is over. Really? Right, you have good intentions. Bye. Thanks for coming. It's not about intentions. But what I found repeatedly is in order to achieve the outcomes that parents want for their children, there has been this huge, and it's happened a lot in the African setting, where we believe the way to get the best out of the children is actually by being so tough, strict.
Right.
But that's what.
Where do they get this from? I mean, they quote the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes when my mom is punished, she goes, even the Bible said. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you punish, or how do you flog a child into, submission, or I don't even know the word to use, because I mean, there's a study word that's called the child. I'm not really a Bible.
I can respond.
I'm not really a Bible person, so I wouldn't really know how to put that. But sometimes, as a kid, sometimes I really wonder, do these people actually love me? Because there was a time I was really going through it, even in secondary school, where someone was harassing me, and I couldn't talk to anyone. My dad was busy at the time. My mom was around, but I just really couldn't come straight with her because it was a guy issue. And for some reason, when I was growing up, I've always been really drawn to the male gender, not in a romantic way because I have brothers. I'm the only girl, So naturally, I'm just drawn to the male gender. But my mom didn't like it, with the whole rape and what have you issue, which I totally understood. But I mean, you can't say because of your fears, you wouldn't allow your child to fly.
Yeah.
I was having issues with someone in school. And if I told my mom that I was having issue with the guy, she would want to twist it into a way that it's not make it look like my fault. So at some point, I just went off. The way I handled it in school was really bad. They were almost contemplating suspending me in secondary school, which didn't happen. But I mean, it didn't really end well for the other guy. But
this is the thing. It's so crazy. Important that I understand, and I feel like it's so important that parents realize that our children need us to be. They don't need us to be judge and jury. It's and it feels like, if I don't correct them, they're not going to do better. But actually, love them. I keep saying this. You love someone into a better behavior. You embrace into better behavior. You forgive them and they want to do better. But when you're over criticizing, quick to judge, I make a joke with my kids. I say to them, do you know how your brain works? If you're holding a glass and I tell you, don't drop the glass, don't drop the glass, don't drop the glass, you're likely to drop it.
Yeah.
But then I say,
you get nervous.
I say to them, but if you're holding the glass and mommy says to you, look at how well you're holding that glass. Oh, you've got a strong grip there. Well done. They're likely to grip it. And we make that joke and all that. But the point is, it's just an example for parents to understand that you love your children into better behavior. Now, I'm gonna pick up on some things you said, because you mentioned that because of the over criticism, because of the judgment, you were actively hiding who you are. And this is something I say to parents all the time. The best a child can be is who they're born to be. But the way in which we raise them, the way in which we treat them, causes them to want to hide themselves, because guess what? Your desire to be loved and accepted by the people who are close to you is more important to a human being than being themselves when they're young.
True.
Can you just talk about that? So how were you trying to hide yourself? What were you doing?
So I'm a poetic person, and they'll say poetic people are weird people. I mean, I used to write when I was a kid, but I used to write really dark stuff. I mean, if you went through my blog, you'd notice some of that. And it was hard because my teachers actually liked my poetry in school. My parents actually never knew I did poetry for any day. My dad just recently, I think that was like a year ago, 2 years, found out about my blog. I don't think my mom still knows I write.
Wow.
So, and it was really, how would I say it? When my teachers tell my parents that, oh, she's very creative, she's this, she's that. And then you hear my mom say, this person you're talking about is not the same person in the house.
Wow.
And then in my mind, I'm like, how am I supposed to be the same person in the house? Okay, I take you back to secondary school. I'm not a science inclined person. I'm arts inclined. But my parents kept pushing. They kept pushing for me to do either a science course or take up economics. I don't like mathematics. I've never really been a fan of, but it's one of the major courses to pass for either of them. But I told him from the onset, in fact, my dad was really head on about me going to study economics in school. In fact, the first conversation we had about my university was outside the country. And then for some reason, my mom came back from one of her trips, because she was on transfer at the time, and just came and said she goes to London. She has never been alone. My parents are very protective people. Till like 2021, that's when I first entered the bus by myself. I know. So they're those kind of people that want to keep up. I mean, it's from a place of love, but at the same time, you have to allow people to do these things. If not, at some point, they just become wanting in this part. So, I mean, after the whole issue of me not going outside to study anymore, my mom just followed those plans. I said, fine. So I sat with him and I asked him, what school do you have in mind? Because I mean, the school I had in mind, they've taken it off me already. So it's either their will or nothing. So I asked him, what school would you want me to go, since you guys are the ones calling the shot? And they said, oh, this one. I said, okay. So when I got to the school, I actually wanted to go for law, but they didn't have law at the time. So I opted for mass communication. And my dad was like, no, you have to study economics. It's one of the leading courses in Nigeria, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't really do very well with mathematics, calculations. But he just kept hammering on it. And I told him, if that's what you want, just take me home. Let me know that, okay, I'm not going to school this year.
Yeah.
So we finally agreed on mass communication, which was a tussle because the back and forth was a lot. But I mean, that was one of my first breakthroughs, my course of study.
Wow.
And as time went on, my school had law, but when it came out, I mean, for some reason, I just wanted to stick with what do you call it? Mass communication. But my dad kept hammering on, you can still go back to economics. I mean, you still have the age thing on your side. And I'm like, I don't. I've told you time and over again. So it was so, yeah. And one day I just told him, you know what? I'm not going to school again.
Oh my goodness. You can't keep his story away from us about being suspended. What happened?
Okay, I'm going to get to that. So while in the university, I picked up a bad behavior. It wasn't peer pressure. Because I'm of the opinion that people can make me do stuff except I really want to. So I started doing drugs in school because it's for some reason it just made me feel more. At the time, it was like a safe haven for me. After the stress, like a distressing whatever. And the school I was in at the time did not, They did not appreciate the use of drugs. Once you're caught, you leave school. So now what I'm saying right now, I'm going to send this link to my dad because I never really came out to tell him what happened. I lied. But the truth is I actually smoked in school that day when they caught me and I was suspended. Actually suspended at home. And go home, my parents being who they are, would always want to make things work. They sat me down. Everybody kept asking, did you smoke? I was like, no. I mean, I was so afraid because my mom, listen up. My mom, when the whole thing was happening, my dad was even still saying, when I told my dad I didn't smoke, my dad said, I believe my daughter. And he stood by it till the very last. Till tomorrow, if you ask him, he would say, no, I have to apologize for that word of these days. And my mom slapped me in front of the panel when we got to school. It was very embarrassing for me, but I mean, I kept telling myself I did wrong, I deserved it. But when I really think about it, I mean, if anything, defend me in public, give me a benefit of doubt in front of people. That's what I wanted. In as much as I know my mom is a very upright person. But I mean, when it comes to your kids, I'm not saying bend or change your values. I'm just saying make them feel more trusting to come to you with these problems, And when she slapped me in front of all those parents who also came who had issues with the school, I actually initially wanted to tell them I smoked, but after that whole slap, I couldn't. I just couldn't. So I just had to keep it to myself. But till tomorrow, if you ask my dad, he'll tell you my daughter didn't smoke. I know it was a whole back and forth. I lost a semester in school, but I mean,
was this a habit that you picked up, or was this a one-off and you got caught?
It was a habit I picked up. I picked up rather, and it wasn't a one-off. So, I mean, it was after school. I just told myself, I mean, I need to get more focused. This is the real world now. This one they didn't prepare us for. I mean, school, they just taught practice or theories. I mean, this is where the whole thing really is.
It's interesting. You're saying this. I was going to say, it's interesting you're saying this because I'm listening to you and I don't know if you realize that what you're describing is quite typical of children who have grown up in a home where, I don't know if people know this, so when you're so controlling with your child, when you cause them without realizing to doubt who they are. And they start to, like you talked about your self-worth being low. I can imagine you didn't have very much self-love for yourself, and that all that emotional pain. I'm listening to you thinking of the most recent case of, DMX and all that. It happens, that's just a high profile one, but it happens all the time. When there's pain in the heart of a person, they are more likely, and this is scientifically proven, they're more likely to be hooked on drugs than somebody who doesn't have that pain that tries it. So sometimes, parents don't realize that the way in which they raise a child can actually cause them to gravitate to these things. And some people, it's not just drugs, it's other illicit things that you don't want to maybe, I don't know, people talk about, with addiction to all sorts. It could be addiction to food, addiction to sex, addiction to drugs, addiction to alcohol. They're all ways to numb a pain inside. And then on top of that, when you now are caught, you get hit again. I'm going to let you just respond to that.
It was really hard to actually stop smoking. I'm actually a year and some couple months clean.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, so even when I left school, I thought I could just, stop. But I had to tell myself some truth. I had to tell myself that, first of all, I was addicted.
Yeah.
And I had to start actively working towards, rejuvenating myself, trying to have positive thoughts. I think it was one of the reasons I had to leave. My parents are based in Port Harcourt, but I made sure I had to leave because at some point I just felt really choked up because every day it's something and I just didn't have that energy. My mom, every minute she's going off about how is this how I'm going to behave in my husband's house? What's that about? So the reason why I actually stopped smoking, that was 2019. So there was a family I was living with, a guardian in Lagos here, and they found out I was smoking, and the woman called my parents and told them. And then my mom called me that day. I know she was really pained and all, but she really said some really hurtful words. Till tomorrow, I still can't forget it. I like to think I've forgiven her, but they're not things you just forget. I made mention of it in that write-up. I wasn't just saying it because I'm just putting it out there. I'm saying because that's what was said to me.
Wow.
I could have used any other thing, but that was what it was.
Is this where you said some people are looking for children and then I ended up with you? Wow.
Exactly. So it was the days I really couldn't go to work because, I really sat down and asked myself, am I really that bad? Did I really deserve that kind of word? And I spoke to my dad. He said she was angry. And I get angry at you guys. You don't hear me cursing you guys out. So if I have that, let's say, patience or discipline, you as my parents should know better. So he obviously he would try to defend his wife in the best way he could. Said he was going to talk to her. I spoke to her. We're good, but sometimes those words just come back randomly. So it's fine. I like to tell myself that I'm not those things. I know I'm destined for really bigger things, so I try not to dwell.
I'm going to take you back to a blog post that you put. Oh my gosh, listeners, please read Atinuke's blog. Oh my gosh, I'll put the link out. It's just, I was hooked. You're such a good writer. I agree with your teachers about you being poetic, and you have a book coming out, Her Story, and as soon as it's out, you need to let me know because I know will be an amazing book. But you talked about you in class about the age 9, and it seemed like I felt like there was definitely there were emotional issues going on there. Let's say your mental health, let's be honest, wasn't great. And I don't know if you realize it, but reading it, and when the listeners read your blog, they will see that this was a young girl, emotionally traumatized. Is this something you can talk about, or is this something you can take us back to?
Not really, no. I'd rather not actually.
Oh, do you know what? I'm going to keep this. I want everyone to know that I'm not going to edit this, because I want you to hear that these things are difficult. And I'm watching and listening to Atinuke as we record this. And that response of "I rather not," it's touched my heart, because there are people who are struggling genuinely. And I just wish that our parents knew this. I wish that parents understood this. And it really hurts me and really touches my heart. I just want us to, from listening to the response that Atinuke just gave us, I want us all to just take a moment and think about how we are raising our children. And I love the fact that Atinuke mentioned it's not about perfection. Nobody here is talking about perfection. But all of us want to know that we are loved, truly loved. We want to feel the love from the people who are raising us. We want to know that we are seen. We want to know that you know who we are, you accept and you love who we are. And, we just want to know that you have our back. So, you know what? I thank you for that answer, because that answer packed a punch. It really did. So thank you for that. But so there's so much that you put out there, and you've now talked about going to see a therapist and, begun your healing process. Talk to us about that.
So I'm not a very added social media person.
Yeah.
I don't like to really put myself out there, but I joined Twitter at some point, and I was struggling because there's a period since I'm alone in Lagos, I was gonna be homesick, but at the same time I didn't want to go home, and I don't know. And talking to my parents didn't make me feel any better. So I felt like, I just needed an honest opinion. I wanted to know if I was the problem.
Wow.
I needed to talk to someone. I wanted to put it all out there and know if I was the problem. So if it's for me to apologize to my parents, I was going to do that. But when we spoke, he said I sounded like I have some traumas that I'm yet to really, let go of.
Yeah.
Which may be true, because sometimes I tell myself I'm over it, but I'm not sure if I'm really exactly over it, and as much as time went on, I felt lighter. That period, because the whole burden of am I the problem was taken off, and it was more clearer, and in his words, like, don't blame them. It's probably what they've been used to. So it's now left for you to try to be better, because you know better now. So I'd always hang on to those words.
I love that. And it's so true. And I think I always say to parents as well, there's no point and no use blaming anybody, because I tried it. I accused, I blamed, nothing. They don't even know what it's like. They don't get so there's no point. The best thing is to realize and make things better. And it's also very important. And I'm going to ask you this question, but I'll just say this first, that it's also very important for parents to not assume that we're doing things better than our parents. We need to stop and really check and reflect and be intentional about how we parent our kids. I'm going to repeat this. It's not about perfection. It's about being intentional, learning and knowing, and keep improving, being open-minded and willing. Don't assume that your method is the right way because you have good intentions. Because we're listening to Atinuke, and she's one of many that will describe good intentions that have just not worked out at all and have yielded, much worse results. But I love your light. I've spoken to you before this interview. I love your light. I love your hope. I love your strength. And I know that, especially in your writing, I know that you'll get a lot of healing through that. But I'm going to ask you to please just speak to our parents. what will you say to them?
What would I say? So, like I tell my aunties, when we had this whole talk and they're complaining about their kids, I asked them, have you spoken to them? She's like, they're just children. I'm like, children are human beings.
Yes.
Before they are children, they're human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And children, the way you react to something will be totally different the way a child would also react.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as parents, I need them to know that you don't know everything, first and foremost. Nobody knows everything. And you need to have what they call it, an open communication line with your kids, so that if anything or anyone harasses them or anything that bothers them, you would be one of the first people. You hear them say, "Oh, I had to tell my mommy," or "I had to tell my daddy," and that way it makes the child, even more confident. It builds a lot of confidence for kids, and then I think it also averts this whole fear of the kids. When you have rape cases and you hear kids say, "Oh, I couldn't tell my mom, I couldn't tell my dad."
Yes.
I mean, God forbid something should happen. Your kids should be able to confidently say, or come home and say that this person touched me inappropriately, or this happened in my school. I mean, you need to be your children's friend, because you are the first people they see when they are born, and you need to be better role models. We're not asking you to be perfect.
No.
We're asking you to be you, but we're also asking you to listen. And not just listen to react, but first listen. If need be, pause, think over, sleep on it, and then come back. Because, there's sometimes when we act out of, passion, anger, and then we begin to regret, and African parents don't know how to apologize. They say, "Come and eat." What is that about? And, it's a cycle. That's why you see kids or adults being very egoistic over nothing. Or you see marriages breaking, and you wonder, say, "Oh, he didn't say this, he wasn't polite." I mean, these things, if the child does something, but you say, "Oh, thank you, darling," or "You've done well." I mean, compliment boosts a child's morale in whatever they are doing, and they strive to be better, because they say, "Oh, my dad said I'm good at this," and it's just there, like, "I'm good at it." It's a positive mindset for them, and they try. You see them actually wanting to be better, So and when you come on, they say, "Oh, say they have a poor result, say you can do better." Not saying this other person doesn't have to hurt. Comparison just hurts, because the kids just think, "Oh, you love their friend more than them," or their friend does something. I mean, what's that about? The sooner we begin to understand that children are people, first, the sooner we can realize that we can actually, get into their heads. You can talk to children. It's how you talk to children that you don't have to coerce them to do anything. They just do it. Say, and it's one thing for you to say, "Do it," but you are not doing it. Go and pray. You're not praying.
That's true.
Go to church. You're not going to church. You lead by example. Or your courage. You see parents cursing. Your children are cursing and say, "Don't curse." I mean, where did they pick that up from? You. So we're not asking you to be perfect. We are asking you to be a bit more, to listen. That's the word.
I agree.
To listen, to understand, and then to react appropriately.
Yeah, I agree.
Because
and if you get it wrong, as you said, apologize. Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, honestly, it's been such a pleasure listening to you. I love your energy. I love your light. I love just everything you stand for, considering everything that you've gone through. And I can see a great person in you. I can see you, just going through this and impacting and helping other people. Because honestly, you, just listen to you and your response to how parents should raise their kids, you will be such an inspirational person for other young people growing up. And Honestly, I wish you the best on your healing journey. I have a feeling I'm going to ask you to please come back on my podcast again. And, thank you very much.
Parenting on Purpose podcast today. Remember to subscribe, leave a rating, and share with a parent who cares. You can follow me on Instagram at abiara.broly, where I post tips and videos regularly to help you on your parenting journey. Let's do this together for our kids.